This video is going to be to show you how I embroider on the faces on amigurumi, which has been mainly the mouth. That's pretty much all I really embroider on, and that's been a question that's come up quite a bit. So I'll show you how I do it. My embroidery skills aren't really the best out there, sort of more on the basic end of things, which is really good if you're just starting out and you just want a way to make basic faces. So this is sort of the standard kitty face smile, the little two little loops, and that's sort of the one that I usually use. This is a little strawberry from a pattern that I'll be publishing shortly. So what you'll need is some embroidery needles. This is a variety pack of 12 needles at sizes 1 through 5, and I will be using one of the smaller ones. This is about as small as you want to go, and then these bigger ones, the length there is really helpful for if you're working with larger pieces. You also want to have embroidery floss, and I almost always use black. It doesn't really matter the brand, but the DMC makes a really nice one. And so I usually start out with way more than I'll ever possibly need, just to be sure that I don't run out. And the first thing is obviously thread your needle, which isn't always the easiest thing to do actually, but sometimes it helps if you lick the end. And then put that through your needle. You can use the little needle threader things that they sell at the craft store, but I find that if I just sort of pinch it and just kind of cram it through, usually I can get a few strands through and then just pull it. So this is a fairly thick floss, so I don't actually double it up completely. So I just have my length of thread, and then I call this the tail. I don't really know what that terminology should be anyways, but so I just have my needle threaded like that. I don't double it or tie a knot on the end. I just secure it into the fabric when I'm done. So I guess I will do maybe the dog. Do the dog. So this is the little puppy dog. And the way that I start is I go into the lower back of the piece, somewhere that people won't really see. And I find a spot, like you see right here, how there's a hole here in between the stitches, no fabric, no yarn. I go in through a hole in between the stitches in the back, and then come out where I want my smile to start. So I don't know if you can see there, the needle's kind of poking out. That's where I'm going to start the mouth. So that's going to be like this part right here. And just push my needle through. And on the end of it, I leave about this much thread hanging out the back through that hole. And I just leave it hanging there. It'll pretty much hold. It's not too, it's not going to pull all the way through. You just have to be a little bit careful not to pull it all the way through. So now what I'm going to do is do the basic outline of what the smile will be. And you just think of this as you're drawing the smile on, but you're using dashed lines instead of solid ones. It's especially helpful to do it this way when you're working with any kind of round shape. You're trying to make a round smile. If you're doing solid lines, straight lines like a V shape or an X, you don't really have to do this quite as much. You can just do the straight stitching. But so I'm going to do a dashed outline of what I want the shape to be. And I go just to make sure that I grab enough of a stitch. I only do maybe 2 or 3 millimeters at a time, and then stitch into the fabric. So there's my first bit, And this will be my second stitch. So now I'm coming up to the middle part. So you can kind of see if we compare him to the strawberry. So this right here is essentially this. That's what that's going to be. So you can kind of see how part of it is a stitch that you can see, but the rest is under in the fabric, anchoring the smile shape that I'm stitching. So now I'm going down and doing another little stitch to have the second little sort of crescent shape of the smile, and then moving back up slightly towards the eye a little bit. Okay, so here's my basic smile kind of dashed outline of stitches that are going to be now reinforced. And what I'm going to do is, instead of stitching the blank spaces into the fabric, which would actually kind of make it look a little bit jaggedy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back around and go and stitch around. So pick up, see how I've picked up that loop? We don't want to make it loose, but I'm going to go pick up the loop of every stitch that I did, and what that's going to do is essentially fill in the blanks. So you see now he's got a solid half of a smile. And you want to be kind of careful not to pick up any of the stitch, the fabric, or like the purple underneath, and just hook through, slide under that that stitch. And now here I decided I wanted to kind of give it a little bit more of a round shape, so I actually stitched into the fabric, and I'm going to double back and pick up the loops to fill in that blank space. And you can go over it quite a few times. There's no real limit. And like, for example, like if we wanted to make this more pronounced, I could actually pull this stitch up and stitch in there. Like if we wanted to make that little peak more pronounced, you can pull that stitch upwards and then just do a tiny little stitch here, and it'll sort of anchor the little top part. And then we just finish off the rest of it. And this is the best way to have a really nice, I found anyway, really nice solid line. Okay. So now I've got all the stitches in place that I want. I'm pretty happy with that smile. You can kind of shape it a little bit. And so I just want to finish it off. So what I do is I push my needle all the way through back to the back of the piece, and find a stitch hole, so another space between stitches. So this one is like right below the one where I went in, and then pull my needle through. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get, depending on how okay, so there's his little face all done. His little mouth is finished. And we've got the thread pulled through to the back. So you can see we've got the first piece, and then this is what we've got working with now. And so you've got it coming out of a hole, and you want to stitch into the back, the underside of the fabric, where it won't be seen. Okay, and then tie both ends together, and you can kind of pull it a little bit tight and tie. I usually tie about 3 knots just to make sure it's tied really nicely. And what that does is that secures the beginning and the end of the thread to itself. And then cut it. And then you can push that little knot using like the eye of your needle, or like a yarn needle or a thicker needle. You can push that knot into the hole under that stitch to hide it. And basically it'll just be loose on the inside of your piece, but it's anchored because you stitched on the underside of this stitch here. And then you just don't want to pull too tight to distort the face. And that is how you embroider on the face. Still kind of see this one a little bit, so just poke it in with scissors. See, it's just pretty well disappeared. You wouldn't even know it was there. I'm not too sure where I did put the stitch for the strawberry. But that's how you do that.